Get down now! The school security officer screamed while slamming the black teenager against the concrete directly in front of hundreds of students arriving for graduation. Gasps exploded across the parking lot. Phones instantly came out. One girl covered her mouth in shock, while another student whispered, "Oh my God." 17-year-old Elijah Carter hit the ground hard beside the school entrance, while his graduation cap rolled across the pavement. One security guard twisted his arm behind his back, while another grabbed his shoulder, forcing his face toward the concrete. Students froze everywhere around them. Parents stopped walking. Teachers stood near the entrance, staring in disbelief. And while dozens of people watched the black teenager get treated like a criminal outside his own graduation ceremony, nobody noticed the black luxury SUV pulling into the parking lot seconds later. Elijah winced in pain. "I didn't do anything." One guard shoved him harder. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Elijah shouted desperately, while people around him continued recording. His white graduation shirt was dirty now. One shoe had slipped halfway off. The humiliation felt worse than the pain, because everyone from school was watching him, like he was dangerous. A security guard held up a small black pouch. "We found this in his bag." Students nearby whispered nervously immediately. "Is that drugs?" "No way." Elijah's breathing became uneven. "That's not mine." The older security officer laughed coldly. "Yeah, they always say that." Several students looked uncomfortable hearing it. One teacher quietly stepped backward toward the entrance, pretending not to get involved. Elijah looked around desperately, hoping somebody would help him. Nobody moved. One security guard suddenly yanked him upward by the hoodie, while another officer moved closer to handcuff him. "You can explain everything downtown." Elijah's eyes widened in panic. "Today is graduation." The guard sneered. "Not for you anymore." The words hit like a knife. Students around them gasped again. A girl near the buses actually started crying while recording. Elijah felt his entire future collapsing in front of everybody he knew. Then suddenly a loud female voice echoed across the parking lot. "Get your hands off my son!" Everything stopped instantly. Every head turned toward the black SUV near the curb. The driver's door slammed open. High heels hit the pavement hard, and the second the woman stepped fully into view, the principal's face turned completely white. The woman marched across the parking lot so fast, even the security guards instinctively loosened their grip on Elijah for a second. Her face burned with fury, while students immediately started whispering around the entrance. "Who is that? Why does the principal look scared?" Elijah stared at her in disbelief. "Mom?" The security guard holding his arm tightened his grip again, trying to recover control. "Ma'am, stay back." She stopped directly in front of him. "Take your hands off him." Her voice came out calm now. Too calm. Dangerous calm. The older security officer crossed his arms aggressively. "Your son was caught with illegal substances." Gasps spread through nearby students again. Elijah shook his head desperately. "Mom, it's not mine." She looked directly into his eyes for 1 second. "I know." Then she slowly turned back toward the guards. "Who searched his bag?" One guard raised his hand slightly. "I did." "Without witnesses?" Silence. The principal finally hurried down the school steps, sweating visibly. "Judge Carter." The moment students heard the name, whispers exploded everywhere. "Judge? Wait, his mom's a judge?" The security guards immediately looked at each other nervously. Elijah's mother never took her eyes off them. "You handcuffed my son in front of hundreds of people during graduation." The older guard straightened defensively.
"We followed protocol."
Judge Carter looked down at the small black pouch still sitting in the guard's hand. Interesting. She stepped closer. Then explain why the chain of evidence was broken before police even arrived. Complete silence. One teacher near the entrance suddenly looked uncomfortable. The guard hesitated. What? Judge Carter pointed directly at the pouch. You opened the bag before documenting the search. The guard's face changed instantly. Elijah slowly realized what was happening. His mother wasn't panicking. She was dismantling them, publicly. Students kept recording from every angle now. One girl whispered, "This is insane." The principal stepped closer nervously. Maybe we should discuss this privately. Judge Carter turned toward him slowly. Privately? Her voice sharpened instantly. My son was publicly humiliated. Nobody spoke. So we will handle this publicly. Elijah felt his heart pounding while students around him stared in complete shock. Less than 10 minutes earlier, everybody thought he was a criminal. Now the entire parking lot was watching the security guards begin to panic instead. Then suddenly another voice came from the crowd. I saw somebody put that pouch in his bag. Complete silence slammed across the parking lot. Every head turned instantly. A nervous freshman boy slowly stepped forward from the crowd, holding his phone with shaking hands. I recorded it. The older security officer's face dropped immediately. And standing beside the graduation banner, while phones continued recording from every direction, Elijah realized the entire situation was about to explode. The freshman boy's hands trembled, while dozens of students turned their phones toward him instantly. I recorded it, he repeated nervously. The parking lot became completely silent, except for distant graduation music still playing near the football field speakers. The older security guard immediately stepped forward aggressively. Put the phone away. Judge Carter raised her hand, instantly stopping him. Nobody touches that phone. Her voice cut through the crowd like a blade. The boy swallowed hard and unlocked the video with shaking fingers. Students pushed closer, trying to see the screen, while teachers exchanged nervous looks near the entrance doors. The principal looked like he wanted to disappear completely. Then the video started playing. Grainy footage from beside the school buses showed Elijah standing alone, adjusting his graduation gown near a bench. Seconds later, another student walked behind him quickly and slipped the black pouch directly into the side pocket of Elijah's backpack before disappearing into the crowd. Gasps exploded across the parking lot immediately. Oh my God. He was framed. No way. Elijah stared at the screen, completely stunned. One security guard slowly lowered his hands from Elijah's shoulders, realizing everything had just changed. Judge Carter turned toward the older guard. You handcuffed my son without confirming evidence. The guard tried speaking. We received a report, and you humiliated him publicly before conducting a proper investigation. More students moved closer, recording every second now. The humiliation had completely reversed. 10 minutes earlier, everybody watched Elijah get treated like a criminal. Now they were watching grown adults panic in front of hundreds of witnesses. The principal stepped forward, sweating heavily. Judge Carter, we can resolve this quietly. She slowly looked at him. Quietly? Her expression hardened. You dragged my child onto concrete during graduation. Complete silence. Elijah noticed students staring at him differently now. Not with suspicion anymore, with sympathy. Some looked angry, others embarrassed for not speaking earlier. Then Tyler Jackson, captain of the basketball team, suddenly shouted from the crowd, "Take the cuffs off him!" More voices joined instantly.
Yeah! He didn't do anything! Let him go!
The crowd energy shifted fast now. Phones lifted higher. Parents arriving for graduation started pushing closer, trying to understand why security officers were surrounding a student on the ground. Judge Carter looked directly at the older guard. "Remove the handcuffs." The guard hesitated. Big mistake. Judge Carter stepped closer. "Now." The security officer quickly unlocked the cuffs from Elijah's wrists, while cameras recorded from every angle. Red marks covered Elijah's skin. Several people nearby gasped, seeing them. Elijah slowly stood up, while his mother fixed the front of his torn graduation gown with trembling hands. For the first time all morning, she looked emotional. "Are you hurt?" Elijah shook his head quietly, even though his shoulder still burned. Then suddenly another voice echoed across the parking lot. "Wait!" Everyone turned instantly. A terrified teenage boy stood near the buses looking pale as death. Students immediately recognized him. Brandon Miller, one of the richest kids in school. His breathing looked uneven while staring at the phone video. He swallowed hard. "I told them Elijah had drugs." Complete silence exploded across the entire parking lot. The principal's face dropped instantly. Judge Carter slowly turned toward him. Interesting. Brandon looked like he might collapse. "I didn't think they'd actually arrest him." Students around the crowd started shouting immediately. "You framed him? What's wrong with you? Are you serious?" Brandon panicked. "It was supposed to be a joke." The moment he said the word joke, the entire crowd turned on him. The second Brandon said the word joke, the parking lot exploded. "A joke!" one parent shouted from near the entrance. "You almost ruined his life!" Students started yelling from every direction now, while phones kept recording non-stop. Brandon looked terrified, standing beside the buses, while the crowd slowly turned against him. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he shouted desperately. Elijah stared at him in disbelief. "You planted drugs in my bag before graduation." Brandon shook his head quickly. "They weren't even real drugs." Complete silence hit again. Judge Carter slowly stepped toward him. "What?" Brandon swallowed hard. "It was fake stuff from a party." The older security officer's face went completely pale, realizing they violently arrested a student without even testing the substance. Parents around the parking lot started shouting angrily now. "You tackled him over fake drugs? Are you insane? This school is unbelievable." The principal looked seconds away from collapsing. Sweat covered his forehead, while district officials arriving near the entrance began whispering urgently among themselves. Elijah noticed something strange then. Earlier, nobody wanted to help him. Now, the same crowd that watched silently was furious on his behalf. Tyler stepped beside Elijah protectively. "You good?" Elijah nodded slowly, still trying to process everything happening. Then another student shouted from the crowd, "Brandon always gets away with everything." More voices joined immediately. "Because his dad donates money to the school. Everybody knows it." Brandon panicked harder. "Shut up!" But students weren't afraid anymore. Phones kept recording, while the humiliation completely flipped directions. Brandon looked around, realizing hundreds of people now viewed him exactly the way they viewed Elijah 20 minutes earlier. Dangerous, guilty, exposed. Judge Carter slowly crossed her arms. "You falsely accused my son." Brandon looked down. "You planted evidence." More silence. "And school security assaulted a minor based entirely on your accusation." The older security guard immediately tried defending himself. "We followed emergency procedure." Judge Carter cut him off instantly.
You slammed a 17-year-old honors student onto concrete in front of his entire graduation class. Nobody spoke after that, because there was nothing left to say. The crowd had seen it happen themselves. Then suddenly Elijah noticed something moving through the parking lot crowd. More police cars. Real police this time. Students whispered nervously while officers stepped out and approached the scene. Brandon's breathing became uneven. The principal rushed toward them quickly. "Officers, we can explain." One officer held up a hand, stopping him. "We already saw the video." Complete silence. The officer looked directly at Elijah's bruised wrists, then toward the security guards, then toward Brandon. Who planted the evidence? Brandon immediately started shaking. Parents continued filming while graduation music still played awkwardly in the background, like the school had no idea how to stop the disaster unfolding outside. Elijah slowly looked around the parking lot. Earlier, he thought his future was destroyed forever. Now the entire school was watching the people who humiliated him begin to panic instead. And standing beside his mother while police questioned the people who publicly handcuffed him moments before graduation, Elijah realized this story was far from over. The real police officers moved through the crowd while students quickly stepped aside, holding phones high to continue recording. The entire graduation entrance had turned into chaos. Parents whispered angrily. Teachers avoided eye contact. Graduation banners waved softly above a scene that looked more like a crime investigation than a school ceremony. Elijah stood beside his mother, rubbing his bruised wrists, while one officer carefully examined the fake drug pouch inside an evidence bag. "This is what you tackled him over?" the officer asked coldly. The older security guard swallowed hard. "We received a report from a student." The officer looked toward Brandon immediately. You? Brandon's face had gone completely pale now.
It was supposed to be a prank." Gasps spread through the crowd again. Judge Carter's expression darkened instantly. "A prank?" Brandon looked like he might cry. "I didn't know they'd arrest him," Elijah finally snapped. "You watched them slam me to the ground." Complete silence hit the parking lot again. Elijah's voice shook with anger now. "You stood there while everybody thought I was a criminal." Brandon couldn't even look at him anymore. Then another student suddenly shouted from the crowd. "He called Elijah dangerous before security grabbed him." Several students immediately nodded. "Yeah, I heard it too." One officer slowly turned back toward Brandon. "Did you falsely report a threat?" Brandon panicked immediately. "No, I just said he had drugs." The officer stared at him. That answer did not help you. Nearby parents started shouting again. "This kid ruined graduation. He could have gotten hurt. They treated that boy like an animal." Elijah looked down briefly, hearing the word animal, because deep down, that's exactly how it felt when they forced him onto the pavement in front of everyone. Judge Carter noticed instantly. Her voice softened slightly. "Look at me." Elijah slowly looked up. "You did nothing wrong." Then she turned back toward the officers. "My son is an honors student." Complete silence. Top 5% of his class. Several students nodded proudly. He received scholarship offers before graduation. The older security guard slowly lowered his head because every new detail made the situation look worse. The principal tried speaking again. "Judge Carter, maybe we can resolve this internally." She turned toward him sharply. "Internally?" Her voice echoed across the parking lot. "Your staff publicly humiliated and assaulted my child in front of hundreds of witnesses." Nobody spoke after that. The police officers exchanged looks. One finally nodded slowly.
We're going to need statements from everybody involved. Brandon looked horrified hearing that. Am I getting arrested? The officer stared at him coldly. You planted fake narcotics in another student's property and caused a false public arrest. Brandon's breathing became shaky. My dad will fix this. The moment he said it, several parents actually laughed in disbelief. One officer stepped closer. Son, your father isn't stopping this video from spreading. Brandon slowly turned around, seeing phones pointed at him from every direction now. Students were recording him exactly the way they recorded Elijah earlier. The humiliation had completely reversed. Then suddenly a loud voice came from near the football field entrance. The ceremony is starting! Everyone turned. Families began slowly moving toward the stadium. Students adjusted graduation gowns. Teachers started directing people toward seats. Life kept moving somehow, despite the disaster that had just happened outside the school entrance. Elijah looked toward the stadium nervously. He almost lost this moment forever. Judge Carter gently fixed his graduation collar again. Go graduate. Elijah hesitated. What about all this? She smiled slightly for the first time all morning. Let the adults deal with their mistakes. And as students slowly began walking toward graduation, while cameras still recorded the aftermath behind them, Elijah realized the people who tried humiliating him had accidentally turned him into the center of the entire ceremony. The football stadium was completely packed by the time students started walking toward their seats in graduation gowns. Parents filled the bleachers holding cameras and flowers, while school staff desperately tried acting like nothing had happened outside. But everybody already knew. Phones buzzed non-stop across the stadium. Students whispered constantly. Parents replayed the videos. Teachers avoided looking at Elijah while he walked toward the graduate section beside Tyler and the others. Earlier that morning, people stared at him like a criminal. Now, entire rows of students quietly clapped as he passed by. Elijah looked overwhelmed. Tyler leaned closer. Bro, you're literally the most famous person in school right now. Elijah laughed nervously. That's not a good thing. Actually, Tyler whispered, today it kind of is. Near the entrance, police officers continued questioning Brandon, while angry parents argued loudly with administrators. The principal looked completely destroyed, standing near the sidelines, speaking rapidly into his phone. Graduation music started playing through the stadium speakers, while students took seats on the field. Elijah sat quietly, trying to calm his breathing. Then suddenly the announcer's voice echoed across the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Westbridge High graduation ceremony. Applause spread through the crowd. But before the principal could walk onto the stage, loud shouting suddenly erupted near the stadium entrance again. Heads turned instantly. More phones lifted into the air. Brandon's father had arrived. Expensive suit, furious expression. Security rushed toward him while he shoved through parents yelling, "Where is my son?" Students immediately started whispering again. That's Brandon's dad. He owns half the city. This is getting crazy. Brandon's father stormed directly toward the police officers near the gate. Take those cuffs off him right now. The officer standing nearby didn't even flinch. Sir, step back. Do you know who I am? The officer stared at him calmly. Do you know how many people filmed your son planting evidence? Complete silence hit the nearby crowd instantly. Brandon's father froze for 1 second after hearing that. Then he looked around the stadium and finally noticed hundreds of phones pointed toward him too. The humiliation spread onto him immediately. Parents started whispering louder. Some even booed quietly from the bleachers. Meanwhile, Elijah sat frozen in disbelief, watching everything unfold from the graduate section. Judge Carter slowly sat beside other parents near the front row, while keeping her eyes locked on the chaos near the entrance. Then the principal nervously stepped onto the graduation stage and adjusted the microphone with shaking hands. "Before we begin," his voice cracked slightly. The stadium became quiet again. "The school administration would like to address the incident that occurred earlier today." Every student immediately turned toward the stage, phones lifted higher. The principal swallowed hard. "An innocent student was publicly mistreated this morning." Complete silence. Elijah's heart started pounding again. "And on behalf of this school," the principal looked directly toward Elijah sitting among the graduates, "we owe Elijah Carter a public apology." Gasps spread softly across the stadium. Elijah froze completely. Tyler slapped his arm excitedly. "Bro!" The principal continued speaking while clearly struggling. "Elijah was wrongfully accused, publicly restrained, and humiliated in front of his classmates and family." More silence. "And the school failed him." The words echoed heavily through the stadium. Then, something unbelievable happened. Parents began clapping. Students joined in immediately, louder, louder. Within seconds, the entire stadium was applauding Elijah while he sat frozen in shock among the graduates. Some students stood up completely. Parents pointed cameras toward him. Tyler grabbed Elijah's shoulder, laughing. "Stand up!" Elijah hesitated. "Stand up, man!" Slowly, Elijah rose from his chair while the applause exploded across the football field. The same crowd that watched him get slammed onto concrete earlier that morning was now cheering for him instead.
And standing near the stadium entrance while police questioned his son in front of cameras and parents, Brandon's father slowly realized the Carter family wasn't the one being publicly humiliated anymore. The applause inside the stadium kept growing louder, while Elijah stood frozen among the graduates, trying to understand how the worst day of his life had suddenly transformed into something completely different. Students clapped above their heads. Parents stood from the bleachers recording him. Teachers who ignored him earlier now avoided looking directly at him out of embarrassment. The principal stepped away from the microphone looking emotionally exhausted, while whispers spread across the football field. "That's the kid from the video. He didn't deserve any of that. The school's done for." Near the stadium entrance, Brandon's father grabbed his son aggressively by the arm, while police officers stood inches away. "What were you thinking?" Brandon's face was completely red from crying now. "I didn't think this would happen." The officer beside them shook his head slowly. "You planted fake narcotics on another student before graduation." Brandon panicked harder. "It was supposed to scare him." Several nearby parents gasped hearing that. Elijah heard everything from across the field because the entire stadium had become almost silent again. Brandon looked toward Elijah desperately. "I didn't mean for security to attack you." Elijah's expression hardened immediately. "But you watched it happen." Complete silence. Brandon opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because Elijah was right. He stood there while security dragged him onto concrete. He watched while students recorded him like a criminal. He listened while teachers stayed silent. And now everybody knew it. Phones continued recording from every direction, while Brandon slowly realized the internet would never forget this moment. Then Judge Carter slowly stood from the parent section and walked calmly toward the stadium entrance, where police surrounded Brandon and his father. The crowd immediately focused on her. Brandon's father straightened aggressively. Your son is turning this into a circus. Judge Carter stopped directly in front of him. No. Her voice stayed perfectly calm. Your son did that himself. Several parents nearby nodded immediately. Brandon's father lowered his voice angrily. Do you know how much damage this is causing my family? Judge Carter stared directly into his eyes. Do you know how much damage your son almost caused mine? Complete silence. Brandon looked down at the ground, shaking. For the first time all day, he finally looked ashamed instead of scared. The police officer beside him folded his arms. Son, you're lucky this didn't end much worse. Brandon quietly nodded. Then something unexpected happened. Brandon slowly turned toward Elijah in front of the entire stadium. Cameras immediately pointed toward him. I'm sorry. The apology came out broken and shaky. Nobody spoke. Brandon swallowed hard, trying not to cry again. I was jealous. Whispering spread instantly across the crowd. Elijah frowned. What? Brandon wiped his eyes angrily. You got scholarships. Complete silence. Teachers liked you. More silence. Everybody respected you. Elijah stared at him speechlessly. Brandon laughed bitterly at himself. And I hated it. The entire stadium listened silently while Brandon finally admitted the truth publicly. So I wanted to ruin graduation for you. Several parents looked disgusted hearing it out loud. Judge Carter slowly crossed her arms. And now you ruined your own instead. Brandon lowered his head completely because deep down he knew she was right. The humiliation had fully reversed. Earlier, Elijah stood handcuffed in front of the entire school. Now Brandon stood surrounded by police officers while cameras recorded his breakdown instead. The principal slowly returned to the microphone, looking pale. Graduates. Everyone looked back toward the stage. Please rise for diploma presentation. Students slowly stood from their chairs while the emotional tension still hung heavily across the stadium. Elijah adjusted his graduation gown and took a deep breath. Tyler grinned beside him. Bro. Elijah looked over. Tyler smiled. This graduation's never getting forgotten. And as Elijah slowly walked toward the stage, while the entire stadium watched him differently now, he realized something powerful. The people who tried humiliating him publicly had accidentally made the entire school respect him even more. One by one, graduates walked across the stage while families clapped from the bleachers. But everybody inside the stadium knew there was only one name they were truly waiting for now. Phones stayed raised. Parents whispered constantly. Even teachers looked distracted sitting near the stage after everything that happened outside. Elijah stood in line adjusting the sleeve of his graduation gown while his heart pounded harder with every step forward. Earlier that morning, he genuinely believed his future was over. Now, the same school that humiliated him was publicly apologizing in front of thousands of people. Tyler leaned closer one last time before his name got called. You better smile when they call you up there. Elijah laughed nervously. I'm trying. Then suddenly the announcer's voice echoed across the stadium speakers. Elijah Carter. The reaction was instant. The entire stadium exploded. Students jumped to their feet. Parents stood clapping loudly. Teachers started applauding. Even people who didn't know Elijah personally rose from their seats after seeing the viral videos online all day. The sound hit Elijah like a wave. He froze halfway to the stage, staring around the stadium in disbelief while thunderous applause echoed across the football field. Several students started chanting his name.
Elijah! Elijah!
Phones recorded from every direction. Tyler shouted louder than anybody. Judge Carter covered her mouth emotionally in the front row, while tears rolled down her face for the first time all day. Elijah slowly walked across the stage, trying not to cry in front of everybody. The principal stood waiting beside the diploma table, looking nervous. When Elijah finally reached him, the principal hesitated briefly before speaking quietly into the microphone. "I am deeply sorry." Complete silence hit near the stage. Elijah looked directly at him. The principal's voice shook slightly. "You deserved better from us." Then something nobody expected happened. Elijah reached out and accepted the diploma calmly, without anger, without yelling, without humiliation. The crowd noticed immediately. Even after everything that happened, he still carried himself with dignity. The stadium erupted even louder after that. Students screamed, parents clapped harder, several teachers wiped their eyes. One coach near the sidelines muttered quietly, "That kid's stronger than every adult here today." Meanwhile, near the stadium entrance, Brandon sat alone beside his father, looking completely broken, while police officers finished taking statements nearby. Nobody was looking at him anymore. Nobody cared about his excuses now. The entire school's attention belonged to Elijah. Judge Carter slowly stood from the bleachers as her son stepped off the stage, holding his diploma tightly in his hands. She met him near the field entrance and immediately hugged him, while cameras captured the moment from every angle. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Elijah finally broke down, crying completely. Not from humiliation this time, from relief. Because, despite everything they tried to do to him, he still graduated. He still walked that stage. And now, the entire school knew the truth. The same crowd that watched him get handcuffed on concrete earlier that morning was now cheering for him like a hero.
And standing beneath bright stadium lights while applause thundered around him from every direction, Elijah realized something important. Sometimes, the people who try hardest to publicly destroy you accidentally become the reason the world finally sees your worth. Elijah finally walked off the stage, diploma clutched tightly in his hands, while the stadium continued applauding and cheering. Parents shouted words of pride. Students waved their phones in the air, recording the moment from every angle. Even teachers who had remained neutral all day nodded quietly, recognizing the injustice Elijah had endured. Judge Carter followed him, still holding his shoulder gently, whispering reassurance. Tyler, Emma, Sophia, and the other classmates crowded around him, patting him on the back and cheering. The principal finally cleared his throat, visibly shaken, and addressed the stadium. "Let this be a lesson for all of us. We owe our students respect and fairness at all times." Brandon and his father sat silently near the entrance, completely humiliated as the crowd ignored them, their authority effectively nullified by the viral exposure. Elijah's mother hugged him tightly as cameras captured the moment, tears of relief streaming down both of their faces. The applause, cheering, and camera flashes continued, but Elijah finally felt the weight lift off his shoulders. The fear, humiliation, and injustice he experienced that morning had been completely overturned in front of hundreds of witnesses. For the first time, he truly understood his own worth, and the entire school watched as justice, recognition, and respect were publicly restored. As the graduates exited the stage, the crowd slowly dispersed, but the memory of Elijah standing resilient and victorious remained imprinted on everyone present. The story concluded with the powerful lesson: cruelty and unfairness may strike at first, but integrity, patience, and courage can turn humiliation
into triumph.